Welcome to Views from the City. I'm your host, Busy J. Follow me on Twitter at Busy J. I'm here to talk real quick, just, give you guys a little, let you know what the Views of the City is all about. It's pretty much all about New York sports mixed in with a little MMA and wrestling action. And I just want to take this time out real quick and talk about Phil Jackson's latest debacle. If you follow me on Twitter, if you follow my blogs, if you follow the publications that I write for, you can follow at NY Sports Daily, Fanside, Double G Sports, Fantasy Jester. I got New York City covered, but back to Phil Jackson real quick. If you haven't heard, he pretty much, he was reading verbatim incident that happened when LeBron James was in Miami, and he pretty much state that, LeBron's pretty much a diva, and now him and his posse, always trying to hold things up. And I felt like the word posse was used out of term. I feel like a lot of the media clickbaits out there are trying to label Phil Jackson a racist or whatever the case may be, an old man. I don't think he's a racist. He's far from it. He's a New Yorker, and just to be around all the great players that he's been around, it was not to be used as a racial slur. He just got he just pretty much, he's like the old man that just isn't hip to what's going on, He's just not hip to today's lingo. Certain things you said 20 years ago, you really can't say now. Me being African American, growing up in the 80s and 90s, the things that we would say in terms about each other, don't be a foss or anything, something crazy like in terms of being sexual or homophobic, you can't say those things now. And I think LeBron might have overreacted. But if you haven't heard the whole story, first, another thing real quick, guys. I'm upset with Phil because I feel like he should not be worrying about any other player except for the 12 players on his current team, which are the New York Knicks. He's lucky they're playing a little bit better now. They're 5-6. I knew it was going to take some time for the team chemistry and the morale to build, but it seemed like it's slowly building. Porzingis is having a great sophomore year. I really am a huge fan of Brandon Jennings. I thought he should have been a Knick years ago. He's a quintessential point guard that Knicks have always needed, than they haven't had since Charlie Ward. Yeah, all the way back then to the 90s. And also, Melo's playing great. Melo's actually being more vocal. I'm loving this new Melo since the summer. I just think the Knicks, I think Phil needs to worry on the Knicks. He needs to worry about making the Knicks better, making sure everybody's being held accountable. This whole idea of having a defensive coordinator in basketball is just atrocious. I don't know where it's going to go from there. But then, you got issues within your own team. You don't need to comment on the next man's team, especially when that next man is LeBron James. Especially when that's Melo's boy. Melo, I thought he handled everything pretty well. He said what he said. He sided with his boy LeBron. And Phil got to watch it. I already sense that a lot of players don't want to play for the Knicks. Why? Because Phil, like I said earlier, he's not a racist, but he could be a little outdated. And if you want to look for something that's more outdated, look at that awful triangle that he's trying to still run. That doesn't work in today's basketball. Today's basketball is all about spacing the floor, getting shooters open. That triangle was great for the 90s and early 2000s for the Jordans and the Shaqs and the Kobes and the Scotties. It doesn't work now, especially when you don't have those parts. So Phil, on behalf of all New Yorkers, can we please lose the triangle and let Coach Jeff Hornacek, use his offense, because I think his offense can flourish in New York. You have the wing players, you have the skill set to do it. Pick and roll, or Porzingis, get Derrick Rose more involved. And Phil, for the love of God, try to help improve the Knicks team. Try to get somebody to come in and help on the bench, because that's what your weakness is right now for the Knicks, is the bench. Out of the 6 games they lost, I would say 4 of those games was lost because of awful bench play. Moving right along, we're going to talk a little about NFL real quick. I think the Giants can catch the Cowboys. I know you're thinking the Cowboys are running away with the NFC East, let alone the NFC, but the Giants' schedule softens up a little bit. They can get past the Bears and get past Cleveland. All of a sudden, they're sitting at 8 wins. I think a lot of people are writing the Baltimore Ravens off. I think Baltimore's going to upset Dallas this weekend. I think that defense is a prideful bunch. That Baltimore defense is prideful. They're going to get under the rookie skin. Both rookies. They're going to get under Zach, and they're going to get under Ezekiel Elliott's skin. I think the Cowboys might go down this week. And then all you got to do is tie the Cowboys, because if the Giants play them again at home and somehow win that game, they own the tiebreakers. So it's all about, playing your opponents at the right time, writing out the schedule. I think the Giants still have a lot of work to do. I think the offense is still going to peak. It's starting to slowly peak a little bit in terms of Eli and Odell getting on board. But when Cruz come back and you can't double team Odell and you can't have the safety spying on him, just look out. Jennings is going to start getting more carries. I think the offense is going to be fine. The defense has been stellar all season. Best red zone defense in the NFL. I think the Giants are starting to turn that corner. They struggled those 3 games at the time when we thought the Vikings were good or we thought Green Bay was good. But I think the Giants are turning that corner, folks. I think they're going to get it together. I think they're going to be a team to be reckoned with in the NFC. The Cowboys need to watch the rearview mirror because the Giants are coming. And now about the other football team in New York, the New York Jets. Listen, they played themselves outbidding themselves for Ryan Fitzpatrick, and it's been showing all season long. The Jets are, I don't want to say in total rebuild mode because they have a lot of skill position players. I think they need to really examine and make a serious run at Tony Romo in the offseason. If not Tony Romo, you got to get yourself another quarterback because Ryan, as the great Bill Parcells says, you are what your record are. If you look at Ryan Fitzpatrick's record, he's a career journeyman. You don't invest long-term in career journeymans. Other than that, I think Coach Bowles deserves one more year. They did finish 10-6 last year. The season was brutal in terms of scheduling. And again, when your schedule is brutal and your quarterback, you cannot depend on your quarterback. A lot of other areas have to play very well to be very good. And you look at Darrelle Revis, he's getting a little long in the tooth. He's getting a little older. It might be time for him to slide on over and be the safety for the New York Jets. I'm just saying that. I'm just putting it out there. Once again, this is Views from the City. I am your host, Busy J. Follow me on Twitter at BusyJ. Follow me on Instagram at BusyJ791. I'm all over the place. I got your New York sports covered. And now we're going to talk a little bit about UFC. UFC gave New York City a lot of buzz this weekend that just passed. Conor McGregor cemented himself as the man in UFC. And now he's a little chirpy. He wants a little stake in the company, which I can't blame him. Think about this. We criticize fighters for not taking big fights. Conor fought 4 polarizing fights in less than 1 calendar year. He beat Aldo in December. He beat Nate Diaz. He lost to Nate Diaz first, then beat him back because he went up in weight. And now he just beat Edgar. He just beat Edgar and became a 2-class champion. If I know Conor the way I think I know Conor, he's a businessman. He's young. He's followed the Floyd. We're going to get into Floyd in a little bit. He's followed the Floyd blueprint, and he's a businessman. I think he might legitimately try to go after Woodley's lightweight championship. I think he might try to go up in weight again and try to get that 3rd belt. Either way, his next fight is going to generate money for UFC. He's the UFC saving grace. Ronda's been unreliable this year. John Jones has been unreliable the last 2 years. So the UFC needs that new face, A lot of the old guys are getting older. They leaving. Sane's gone. So I think what you got to do is you got to capitalize around Conor. You got to give Conor what he wants. He's holding your company hostage because he could easily go to Bellator and demand a king's ransom, and Bellator will have no problem giving him that money because he will perform for them. He'll be the guy. It'll be like if you guys remember the WWE and WCW days where, folks were leaving back and forth and they were like, trashing the company on the way out, Conor will do the same thing. He'll go over to Bellator and be like, listen, nobody beat me in UFC. I was the man over there. Now I'm taking my talents down to Bellator and I'm going to kick ass, take some names, and do what I got to do over here. So that's something long term that they might have to look at. Dana White and the new ownership, they might want to give this man whatever he wants. If he wants a little equity, a little 10%, 20%, they might need to do that. They might need to really examine that because this guy is a cash cow. And I think a lot of people are more hip to UFC now with Conor being the face than they were with Ronda, because that's just the world we live in. We like to see our females, but it's still a male-dominated sport. So that's something, they need to look at, especially now that they're infiltrating the New York market. They'll be back here in New York in February for UFC 209 in my borough, the great Republic of Brooklyn, New York. They'll be at the Barclays for 209. I would be shocked if Conor's not on that card. He could probably defend the featherweight title. He could probably finish off the trilogy with Nate Diaz because I feel like that rivalry needs a clear finish. Either way, I don't see how you cannot keep Conor off that card. And the UFC is growing. It's never been as more popular as now. There's going to be a bidding war at the end of next year between Fox Sports and ESPN. I'm pretty sure Fox will probably retain it, but it will not be without a fight. So, hey, I applaud what Conor's doing. I feel like a lot of NBA and NFL players need to follow suit. Take some equity in your performance because you are the brand, you are the performer. And these owners are making a cash cow and it's millionaires versus billionaires, but why can't the millionaires be a little bit more richer compared to the billionaires? That's just my two takes on that. We'll see what happens down the line. Once again, this is Views from the City. I'm your host, Busy J. Feel free to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, Busy J. Now we're going to talk a little. I didn't want to talk about the Brooklyn Nets. They're playing a lot better than I anticipated. I think the rebuilding is going just fine. I think the team will be. They'll be competitive. They won't be great. They won't be good. They won't be great. They'll be far from great, but they'll be competitive. And I'm like the competitive spirit I'm seeing out of the Brooklyn Nets. I just think, at some point we might want to look at trading Brook Lopez and getting some assets because you have no assets coming. Boston still has your first round pick for this year and next year. It makes you wonder, how did that trade go down? You really, I think a lot of teams need to really watch what the Nets did when they got Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett. When you're doing business, I don't think you should mortgage so much of your future for the right now, especially when that right now has in front of you the greatest roadblock since Michael Jordan, which is LeBron James. I think that was a bad crapshoot they did, and, you reap what you sow. So the Nets are going to be in rebuilding for a long time. I feel like they sabotaged the fan base in New York because New York was ready to get behind the Brooklyn Nets. When I go to Nets games, I would say since the first year Barclays Center opened, when you go to Nets games, it's really the visiting team's extension of a fan base. I've always seen Celtics fans, Bulls fans, Miami fans, Cleveland fans, Detroit fans, every other fan base heavy inside Barclays Center. And it's, as a New Yorker, it's something you don't want to see, but I guess just what happens when you're a piss-poor run organization. Sorry, Nets, I gave you 2 seconds. That's just pretty much what you deserve until you guys get your act together. You got Survivor Series coming up this weekend. I'm ecstatic. I was at NXT New York last night. Festive crowd, great atmosphere. NXT is my favorite brand out of all the wrestling going on in the WWE. NXT is my favorite because it has that old school flavor, low key, intimate. They don't like to do the big crowds except for when it's like, a big pay-per-view like SummerSlam, Survivor Series. Then they'll do the big crowds. But normally they do the nice intimate setting. It was at the theater at the Garden. It wasn't on the Garden floor. It was at the theater, which holds about about 10,000 people. Very intimate, very great, very gracious crowd. great wrestling. I think the future of WWE is bright. People crap all over the product right now, but it's going to get better when some of these guys get on the main roster, or when some of the guys on the main roster come back healthy, like